അവിടുന്ന് വൈകുന്നേരം പണത്തിയിൽ എന്നെ അവർ
Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. Get ready for an extraordinary episode of Noon, where we're excited to welcome Vinnie, a retired sheriff commander and seasoned comedian. With a career dedicated to serving his community, Vinnie has accumulated a treasure trove of wisdom and life lessons along the way. From navigating the challenges of law enforcement to finding humor in everyday situations, Vinnie's journey has shaped him into the remarkable individual he is today. Join us as Vinnie shares his unique blend of humor and insights, offering a glimpse into the world of law enforcement and comedy. Don't miss this opportunity to laugh, learn, and be inspired by Vinnie's stories and experiences on Noon. Let's get started. All right, Vinnie, thank you so much for joining us on the 911 Nonsense podcast. I'm so stoked to have you out, man.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. For those of us that don't know you, can you go ahead and give me an introduction?
Well, my name is Vinnie Montez. I've spent the last 48 years living in Colorado, where I was born and raised. I hail from a small little town. It's not too small anymore. It's where the University of Colorado is, Boulder, Colorado. And my career has been spanning 26 years as a law enforcement officer. I'm now a reserve. I just gave up being a commander for the agency that I work for in Colorado. And now I became the public information officer. And in the midst of doing that career, I found myself in a pretty rough spot dealing with my mental health. In 2007, 2008, I got serious about comedy and I started doing open mics. And now I tour all over the country doing a lot of corporate events, a lot of law enforcement, first responder events, doing stand-up comedy. And it's really been not only cathartic for me, but just absolutely amazing to share this gift with people around the country.
That is amazing. So how did you decide you were going to get into comedy?
Well, the truth be told, like in the early 90s, I started as a law enforcement explorer in 1990. So I think I was about 14 years old. And I was really excited. I used to watch two guys named Ponch and John all the time on Chips growing up. And so I wanted to be a cop. And the only way I could figure out to do that was join the Explorer program, which lets you ride with officers and learn about the day-to-day job that they do. And I watched and participated in a lot of cool things in that age from 14 to 21. And then when I became a cop in 1998, I first went to the jail. They said, "Hey, kid, you need to get some life experience. So we're going to have you," because I work with the sheriff's office, and they wanted me to get some experience working in the jail, get some life experience. And I did that for 3 years. And then I went to patrol, and a lot of people refer to me as a magnet of if things are going to go bad, I'm going to be around. And that was true for my entire career while I was on patrol. None of the people that I rode with in the 90s or in the early 2000s when I was actually out on patrol, none of the people really were talking about mental health. That wasn't a real thing. So all the things that we saw, taste, smell, touch, hear, that was all confined to ourselves. And I felt like I had to compartmentalize all of that. As time went on, I realized I was struggling a little bit, but it wasn't until 2008 where I had a kid that I couldn't save in the canyon. 17-year-old kid, it really bothered me and it pushed me over the edge. And what I mean by pushing me over the edge, it simply made me come to realize I wasn't able to deal with my own mental health issues. I was struggling. I was probably drinking a little bit too much. I was just creating a bad environment for myself. And I had to take a self-reflection. And I always loved comedy, watching it growing up, Def Comedy Jam, all those things. But I was that cop who didn't do anything besides work. I worked nonstop. And people even gave me a hard time. "Why are you always here? What are you always doing? Don't you take any time off?" I lost 2 relationships over it. It was terrible. And when I started doing comedy, I started defining who I was outside of the job. And I know there's a lot of people that come into the job and they're super happy with it and they want to do it all the time. I'm sure you've experienced this when you first started, but you want to be there for the community and you want to serve and you want to be there all the time. Well, I was overdoing it and I didn't have a true identity other than the cop identity. And comedy really brought me out of that. And now today, if you ask me what I do, I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm not here just to be in law enforcement. I'm here to work and serve in law enforcement, but that's not my identity about who Vinnie Montez is today.
And who is Vinnie Montez?
Today, Vinnie Montez is a family person, a person that loves to enjoy spending time with his friends, loves to travel, loves to be at work and do his job. I love to do my job, but I certainly understand that there has to be a fine balance between being at work all the time now. And it really had to come to terms with dealing with my demons. And everybody has different demons. Mine was, working all the time, not letting the job go, and acknowledging that I was struggling with my mental health. And not only did it start as dealing with my own mental health issues, but reaching out to get help. And I think a lot of law enforcement, and not just law enforcement, police officers, but I think a lot of people in the EMS industry struggle with the ability sometimes to recognize when they're struggling. And it wasn't until I started reaching out to counselors to try to get that help that I finally realized how that was going to be. And I had a lot of hurdles with that at the beginning. For example, when I first reached out for mental health clinicians to help me and like to go to a counselor, I reached out to our EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program, and they really didn't have counselors. They were just general counselors that worked for the county that I work for. And I would go see these people, and they could not relate at all. As a matter of fact, while I was sharing some of the stuff that I was going through with them, I could see they were cringing on their face. They were taken aback by some of the scenarios that I was laying out, and it made me feel like they really couldn't relate, and it didn't feel like I could get the help from them. It wasn't until I got tied in with Brower and Associates, and she used to work for a different company before she was out on her own, but they were specific counselors related to law enforcement and EMS personnel. They had clinicians that were able to really listen to what I was going through and give me feedback that was real, that they knew I was going through. They could understand it, and I could see it in their faces as I was talking to them. And eventually they got me to the point where I was comfortable and confident enough to start EMDR therapy, which you follow this light and it really helps your brain process both sides of what's going on. And when I started doing that and also going to regular counseling sessions, even to this day, my better half, Katrina, she'll tell me, you know what, it's time for you to go see Tiffany. I think you're getting a little neurotic here. And it's true, because it's a lifetime commitment, I think, to addressing those mental health things and dealing with things that come up, and taking a step back now from being in the full active commander side, where I was responsible for all night shift patrol, the FTO program, our fleet, our cadet program, our reserve program, and now just being responsible for one employee in the public information sector. That was a cognitive choice to balance myself out so I could make more room for comedy and things that I do outside of work, which I would have never done in my early age coming into the sheriff's office. So, in a quick capsule, that's who I am today. I also love spending time with my mom and my brother, besides Katrina, and they're just great. My mom is 78 years old now. She's a traditional Mexican mom. My dad passed away in 1999, right after I became a police officer in 98. And I'm really proud that I really value those relationships today, because I kind of, like I said, I alluded to earlier, is I lost two relationships. I was engaged twice before I met Katrina, and I lost both of those relationships. And truly, that was my fault. I wasn't putting the time and the attention into those relationships that I should have. And I was devoted 100% to the job, and it cost me. And I look back at it now, and I truly own that. And it's the truth about what it is.
Well, dude, I don't really know you, and I don't know who you were back then, but seeing who you are now and hearing you talk, man, I am so proud of you and proud of where you're at, dude. That takes a lot, brother. It takes a lot, and you've done it. And it just really shows your level of emotional intelligence. And the fact that you're going around and sharing this is super, super impressive, dude. Like, keep up the good work, man. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I would have not been able to do this in the early 2000s. I would have even shied away from it. People ask me, I give this example all the time. Back then, I used to watch the deputies I work with. They'd ask each other, and I wasn't even a cop yet, but like, hey man, you good? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm good. And I never heard them talk about like struggling in any way, shape, or form, and they would compartmentalize that. My sheriff, as a matter of fact, before the incident happened to me in 2008, the sheriff had pulled me aside. Joe is a great guy, great mentor. He actually was an explorer at our agency where I grew up at. He pulled me aside and he gave me a book by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. He gave me the book to help me out before I got in the trenches. And of course, when you're in your early 20s, you know everything. Nobody can tell you anything. And I was certainly that person. And it wasn't until after it happened, where I started reading that book. And I recommend it to anybody who's involved in law enforcement, not only for the people that are in the job, but their family members too, to understand the dynamic of what happens to individuals that are in the EMS field. We're always on a heightened state of alert. We come home, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. After a long shift, you're like, oh man, I just want to chill. I just want to chill. And your significant other, this was so me. They'd be like, hey, let's go do something. I'm like, no, you go ahead. I'm good. I want to just chill. Instead of getting right back on the horse and trying to get yourself back into what you're doing outside of work. And of course, I would never want to make decisions. Where do you want to go eat? I don't care. Wherever you want to go eat. What do you want to do? I don't care. Whatever you want to do. And you lose that. If you're not conscious about it, you lose that ability to make those decisions in your personal life, because when you're at work, you're always making decisions. Okay, I got to go to this place. I got to find that address. Maybe somebody's having a crisis over here. I got to go make all the decisions of how that call is going to come out. So I had to really become aware of forcing myself to do it. And sometimes it's just as simple as going out and taking a walk. And I've really had to push myself to do that lately in this new job, because I've started like consuming everything again as a PIO. And I've really had to take a time out and say, hey, Vinny, check yourself. Make sure you're not overdoing it again, because, anytime a challenge, my personality gets drawn into it. I want to do it to the very best of my ability, but it's okay if it's not perfect all the time. It's just my mind always wants to make it perfect. And so, again, I share that only because today in 2024, here I am 26 years after being a cop. I still struggle with those things, and I have to be very cognizant about not letting them envelop me again.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. So it sounds like you're hyper fixating on things, and I think a lot of us do have that problem. There's a couple of things that you talked about that I want to bring back up if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
You had talked about how your boss told you need to go get some life experience and put you in the jail.
Hmm.
What life experience did you take out of those 3 years?
Wow, that is so great that you asked that, because every time I think about my 3 years in the jail, before I went to the jail, I was actually a reserve deputy on patrol. I had gone through the full-time FTO program. I had graduated. They could have just give me the keys and set me on my way on patrol. But I was a really overzealous kid. I didn't, I'd grown up, but I hadn't really been out in life yet. I had experienced tons of relationships, etc. When I went to the jail, there was a very good person by the name of Ross Martinez. He was a sergeant at the jail. He was a very wise man. He was a sergeant. He was my sergeant. And he taught me a lot about the one thing you need to learn in life if you're going to be effective in any role in the EMS world, whether fire, paramedics, police, whatever it is, and that is respect. And what I mean by that is understanding where you fit into the world. So when I went into the jail, I felt like I had to prove myself. They put me in this uniform, and I had to be this guy who was telling inmates how to be, and making sure that I was holding them to the letter of the law as far as the rules and regulations in the facility. And I remember one time we had a fight in the module. We'd taken care of business, and I was standing in the officer work area, and I was high fiving my partner. And Ross walked in. He's like, I want to talk to you in the hallway. And I was like, what's up, Ross? He's like, listen, we pay you here to make sure that you are doing your job. You're not here to be grandstanding in front of these inmates. You're not here to be showing that you're above them. And sometimes the way I was with inmates, I was a little more gruff. I was like, you didn't understand the dynamic of treating people with all that respect. You're just trying to prove that you're this good cop. And I wasn't like I was doing anything bad, but there's a way to carry yourself. There's a way to explain things and to understand that those people that are in there, 95% of the people that are inside of the jail, they've made mistakes. They're human beings. They're just like you and me, but we're not there to make them more tense or more stressed out. It's already stressful enough for them to be in that environment. So understanding that dynamic and how I talk to people, how I carry myself, how I stand, the look on my face, the way I address them, he really put his size 9.5 in my butt on a regular basis. And it was not because he didn't think I was a good person. He just wanted me to understand that dynamic. And the Vinnie Montez that went into the Boulder County Jail to work at the very beginning, in the beginning of 1998, to where I came out in 2001, were two different people. And I don't think, had I been given that opportunity to really learn the dynamics of, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Smith, or, I would treat people differently when I came out. And they would call me the gas man when I worked in the jail. So when I first started there, I come down the hallway, there'd be an incident, and instead of calming it, I have more of effect of elevating it. And that was hard, a hard lesson for me to learn. But I was so glad that the people who are wise around me could see that I needed to grow up a little bit. I needed to mature a little bit, and I needed to have those people who invested in me and give me their time to mentor me and mold me to where I ended up being. And then when I came out of the jail and I went to patrol, I was able to apply all the lessons that I learned inside the jail outside on patrol. It made me a much more effective deputy. It made me a much more effective person. And I truly tip my hat to Ross Martinez and all the other supervisors who really, they loved me and they were great to me, but they also didn't hold back from telling me what I needed to hear. And I think everybody needs those people in their life. And I was glad that I had the ability to actually take that in and hone that skill. And here we are 20 some years later. And I'm just grateful for it.
No, that's a really cool story, dude. And I'm glad that you were able to take that opportunity and kind of run with it and learn from all of those people that were teaching you, because some people would have been like, nah, this is bullshit. Like, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? But you, like, you took it, like you said, you took that 9.5 shoe up your butt for so long that it actually sat. So do you feel like you took those lessons and turned them around and gave those lessons out when you started training, if you ever did any training?
Yeah, so I was a field training officer when I was on patrol. I think I was probably 3 years on or 4 years on before I was a FTO. Um, I look back in the way I was then to where I am now. I wish I could have them back, but everybody has those growing pains. I would try to impart things on people by telling them what not to do. So, hey, you're going to go do this, whatever the situation is, make sure you do X, Y, and Z. Instead of just setting the guardrails of like, hey, as long as it's not illegal, it's not going to embarrass the department, and as long as like you're not going to violate somebody's rights or it's going to be criminal, letting people have the ability to fail is probably the most important thing in the world, especially as a supervisor. And a field training officer is a first line supervisor. That is the first opportunity you ever get to supervise. And I was a micromanager, especially when I first became a sergeant. I was more like worried, okay, don't go do this, make sure you're gonna, did you do this, check the list. And that's great because that's a manager, that's not a leader. And was I managing things so they got done right? Yes. But was I building the people in order to be their independent critical thinkers to get to be really good at what they do? It wasn't until I went in to supervise the drug task force. And when I supervised the drug task force, I was supervising people that probably had about 10 years average experience. And those people would remind me, hey, I've been doing this for a while. And some of the mentors I had in there that were sergeants with me or a commander with me, they were able to mold me and guide me a little bit more. And I truly took away from that is like, listen, you got to let people have the opportunity to fail. They have to be able to think, divide their own path. And if they fail, as long as it's not illegal or bad, they'll have those memories in order to guide them in the future. And so sometimes listening to people and people coming into my office and saying, hey, Sarge, this is what I want to do, sitting back and saying, okay, are you asking me for my help, one, or are you just bouncing this off of me because you're trying to figure out what you're going to do? And as long as nothing they're saying violates those 3 rules that I told you, then you got to let them go. And you got to let them learn on their own, because you're not helping them become better leaders and better people to serve the organization. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. I'm very open about that. I was a terrible sergeant as far as being a leader at the very beginning. But you only learn through trial and error. And today, the guy who supervises now, I'm in a different role, obviously, now, but looking back on it, I was so glad that I had those good mentors. And the one thing I will share with you, Sam, is I was very lucky throughout my career. I only got to where I'm at today is because there's a lot of people that took a lot of time and energy to invest in me. And the one thing I have done is give back in that way. There's people throughout the agency that I've tried to mentor along the way, give them a little bit of guidance, give them maybe a boot in the ass every now and then. But they've been very successful, and I pay that back because there's so many people investing in me. And that goes all the way back to my mom and dad, who gave up everything to make sure I could go to a good school, to get that education. My parents don't have any formal education aside from maybe going to maybe middle school. My dad, not even that. But I was the first one to graduate high school in my family, and I was the first one in my immediate family to graduate college. Although I was on the 20-year plan, I still got it done.
Bro, I feel you with that. I'm the first one in my family to graduate from college, and it was a long time, but it's a big moment.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what made you think that you were funny enough to be a comedian?
I don't know that I ever thought that I was funny enough to be a comedian. I just used to watch people like Bernie Mac on Def Comedy Jam. I remember watching some of the people that I really started watching like the early 90s. I want to think this came out in the early 90s, was the Kings of Comedy. And that was D.L. Hughley, Bernie Mac, headlined that, Cedric the Entertainer. and Steve Harvey. And so watching the Kings of Comedy, and then I used to love to watch the way they were able to just take a crowd and just totally turn it upside down and make people laugh. And when I saw them making people laugh, I was like, I want to do that. I had no idea what comedy looked like, other than what I saw on TV. So I took it upon myself, and I guess this was a fortuitous moment where that overzealous, like whenever I get fixated on something, I go for it. I just started going to a bunch of open mics and performing on Colfax in Denver, which is not like, there's some pretty rough areas. And I remember performing specifically at the Squires Lounge, where people didn't want to hear about a cop talking about his routine. Nobody's paying attention. It's really, really bad. And where I really got my start and my break was joining the new talent program at Comedy Works in Denver. And Comedy Works is synonymous with being one of the best clubs in the country. And I started there in 2007, and I slowly made my way up. I think it was 2013 when I got the Almost Famous list. So then I got to open for people that were very famous coming through the club, and that set the tone. It wasn't until about 2018, 2019 when I actually became a headliner. I think it was 2019 where Comedy Works actually put me on the rotation as a headliner for the club, and I've been headlining since then. But it was a big honor, and it's a really big deal because you strive to get to that level. Because wherever you go in the country, you say, "Well, I headline Comedy Works," like, wow, that's a big deal. I got my first special on Dry Bar in 2019, and we just finished filming my second Dry Bar special in October. That's coming out early May, end of April-ish. And then I got an opportunity to film a documentary, which is going to come out later in the year, and it's just incredible. So again, it's that whole evolution of putting in the time and putting in the work. There's no shortcuts. I think people are amazed now. They're like, dude, how did you get to do all this comedy? I'm like, well, it didn't start last week.
Yeah.
This is years and years in the making. And now I'm paying, I'm able to benefit for some of the fruits of that labor. And it's amazing that people ask me to come perform for them all over the country. And this year I got super lucky. I performed for the Gary Sinise Foundation twice last year. Once in May, I went up and toured and performed for all the military bases by Fairbanks, Alaska, with the Gary Sinise Foundation. And it was me, Vertical Horizon, the band, the lead singer for Vertical Horizon. And we went up there, and they didn't have the whole band. It was just him and then me. We're each doing an hour at all these different military bases. And then November, they had me back out in Texas and Arizona performing for the troops and also Border Patrol. And then this year they hit me up and they're like, "Hey, we'd like you to go to Poland and perform for the troops."
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh.
"Poland?" So now I'm all excited. My first international tour. Pretty excited about it. Hopefully I can make it back from that. I don't know. I've never been to Poland before, but we'll see how that goes.
Congratulations, man. That's so
Thanks.
exciting, dude.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite comedian?
Bernie Mac, day and night, that dude. Like when I'm on stage, I feel like I emulate his spirit because like I am present. Like I'm not just kind of like, and I'm not taking anything away from the comedians who are more dry. They stand there, they say what what their bits are, and they're very like low key. That is not me. Like when I'm performing, I am in your face. I am there. I am present. A lot of act outs, a lot of sound effects, all that stuff in concert to bring to stage and to create the imagery that I want people to have as I'm sharing the stories and talking about the things that I want to talk about. And it's been amazing to see people. Last night I did two shows. I'm sorry if I'm a little hoarse, but I had two shows in middle of suburbia performing for a homeowners association. The shows were both sold out last night, and the people were laughing so hard. I mean, there was some drunk people, of course, but we had a great time. And I got off stage. I was soaking wet, but everybody left with a smile, and they were having a good time. And people think like I like being the center of attention, and the truth be told, I don't. They're like, "Well, that's crazy because you're a stand-up comedian." Well, they don't realize that I am getting cathartic experience by them laughing. I'm giving to people so that they can enjoy themselves and have a good time, and I can enjoy that at the same time. But I don't like accolade. Like if you were to say, "Hey, let's get together and let's honor Vinnie" or something like that, I don't like being a center of attention that way. I like being the person who's giving, making people laugh, having a good time. That's what I get out of doing stand-up comedy. So people, I think, sometimes think that I love being the center of attention. I really don't. It's the ability for me to share that gift and make people laugh that gives me so much fulfillment.
Dude, that's so cool. What a cool way to think about it and what a cool way to do. Who was your favorite person to open for?
My favorite person to open for. I've been able to open for a lot of greats. Before Gilbert Godfrey passed away, I opened for him. Paul Rodriguez, I've opened for him. And it's so weird to be in a green room behind the scenes with these really super entertainers and get that experience, because they're so much different when they light up on stage. A lot of these comics, they tend to be a little more reserved in the green room. Caroline Ray, I got to share the stage with Joe Rogan one time, which was amazing. I mean, like, he wasn't where he's at today. This has got to be well over 10 years ago. Um, you just name it. All those people, gosh, I don't even know who to say. I would probably, even Paul Reiser, he was amazing. I'd probably say Paul Rodriguez. And the only reason I say Paul Rodriguez is because when I was coming up, like George Lopez, Paul Rodriguez, like the Latin Kings of Comedy. I don't know
Mhm.
if you ever saw that. It was him. It was Paul Rodriguez headline. George Lopez opened. Alex Raymundo, who's from Texas, was on that show, and the guy from Cheech and Chong. Oh my gosh, what is his name? The little guy, bald. Come on, help me out, girl. Come on, Sam.
Dude, I can't help you.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I think Paul was, and it was just so cool to be in a room with somebody that I looked up to, and remember watching Coming to America, not Coming to America, but Born in East LA, back in the day when I was a kid. And here's the guy that was praying to Jesus on the floor in that apartment. He was this huge comedian. Here I am in the backstage with him hanging out, and yeah, it's crazy. And I can't even tell you the honors I've had. I met Garth Brooks for the first time last year in Nashville. I wasn't even expecting it. Next thing you know, there's Garth Brooks. I'm at the Nashville. I'm there in Nashville at the Grand Ole Opry, and I got invited to meet with another country music person, Mark Wills. And the next thing you know, Garth Brooks is there. They're having a Keith Whitley special where they're honoring Keith Whitley, who passed away. And here Garth Brooks is to close the show. I got a picture with him. I got a chance to talk with him, make a video with him for my troops back at home. And I'm like, is this even real? How does this even happen? So it's very humbling for me. I always take it. I fangirl the hell out of people, man. I really do. I don't take it lightly that I get these opportunities. So yeah, it's been crazy.
That is so cool. That is so cool that you got to meet all those people and you got to do so much stuff and to be where you are. What just a cool opportunity. So, what is the majority of your content based around?
So up until now, the majority of my content has been based upon um, my job being in law enforcement. I love giving people an inside look of what being a cop was like for me. I mean, I'm still a reserve deputy, so I'm still commissioned, but I'm not active. I haven't put on the uniform in 2 months, which is crazy. Um, so I talk about all the things from dealing with bears, from working a 420 event where I get a contact high, from talking about some of the crazy things that I love to do when I'm on duty, like eating an ice cream cone, but hiding when I do it because I don't want the public to see me crushing an ice cream cone, to talking about my mom, who is a traditional Mexican mom, riding along with me and getting involved in the calls that I go on. And I talk a lot about my mom and my Mexican heritage, which I think is so important because that combo really does well for me because people just they don't see things the way I do. They don't necessarily or didn't grow up the way I did, but like my mom resonates. Everybody has a different picture of who their mom is, but they really fall in love with my mom. And to the point that I took my mom on a mountain tour. This is probably 2 years ago. So I did like 3 shows up the mountains in Colorado. The shows were all fantastic. And I talked about my mom and I acknowledged that she was in the crowd. So after the shows, I get done on meet and greet with everybody. And lo and behold, my mom has a longer line of meet and greet than I do. And people are like, want to go over, they want to say hi to my mom, and she's so cute, she's so tiny, and they're hugging her and like, oh my god, I love your son, and oh my gosh, what was it like? And they're just carrying on and on and on. I did a show. I took her to Wyoming with me one time, like I was probably over a year ago, and literally like everybody had cleared out from the building, and I got done giving stickers out and meeting people, and my mom was still carrying on. I was like, anytime you're ready to go. It was kind of weird, but um, people love her, and I even had shows where people are like, "Tell us more!" Like they just yell out, "Tell us more about your mom," and I'm like, "All right." Who I haven't talked about, which is changing for me right now, is I haven't talked about my dad. I did it a couple times in the last month and a half, but that's the new part of me that needs to come out. and talk about that relationship I had with my dad. And I think that the reason I haven't talked about it is I've been mourning my dad's loss for over 2 decades now. My dad was such a good human being. He was such a brilliant man. My dad's name is Rudy Montez. My whole spirit of who I am. I know I give a little bit of credit to Bernie Mac, but truly that ability to relate to people, the ability to make people feel good about themselves, the ability to talk to anybody in any situation, no matter what it was. The epitome of that is my dad. And the hard part for me growing up and accomplishing all these things, from becoming a jail deputy to a patrol deputy to becoming a detective, a narcotics detective, a sergeant, a narc sergeant, a commander, all these little wins across my entire life and career, you always want to share those with the people that are the closest to you. And I always wanted my dad to see me become a police officer, which he was able to do. But right after that, he passed away. And as I met these milestones, I wish that in my heart that I know he knows what's going on, but I wish he could have been here present to be at some of those things when I had my first sergeant's badge pinned on, or when I made commander, because I truly believe, I think I was the second Latino commander ever promoted in our agency, and that was a big milestone. I come from a family that's very tight, and you being from Berkey, like I told you earlier when we talked previous to the show, I used to go to New Mexico every year with my family at least once, and we would always have the hatch chili, and we would always make sure that we had piñon, and we would go to Old Town, and we would buy turquoise jewelry and other random stuff that nobody ever needs. And my family still lives down there by Gun Club and Coors, and my dad would just light up the room, and they would always, like, for some reason, I'm getting real personal here. Every time we go visit my Auntie Quinty, my uncle Benny, who lived down there, and his family's still there. He worked for the state penitentiary system, and every time we go to their house, they would make my brother and I, even as we got into our adolescence and early teens, we'd have to sing that damn Scooby Doo song. For whatever reason, we sang it when we were kids, but for every year that we came after, we had to sing the Scooby Doo song, which was like the most embarrassing stuff I'd ever done in my life, especially as I got older. And I don't know if you remember, but George Lopez has this saying where he's like, his grandma would be like, "Hey, mijo, do the tantaran," where he'd come out in his white chonies, and he'd have the
Yes.
towel wrapped around. He'd be like, "Do the tantaran." He'd be like, "No," he didn't want to do it because they'd always want him to do that. That's what kind of happened to me. Every time you do that bit, I think about me and my brother having to sing that damn Scooby Doo song. But the family and the culture and how that really was down there, and the voice that came from it, because like I don't really have an accent. And when we go down there, everybody start talking like they do in Albuquerque. Pues, mijo, we're gonna go to the store. Y sabes que? We went down there, and your tia was there, and everybody was talking to her. And then we come home to Colorado for like a week. I'd be like, Dad, I'm gonna go to the school, and they said we're gonna have a show. And, and all my friends would be like, what the hell's going on here right now? But I think back about those times and what it was like to be around that family, and that the way my dad always brought us together that way. And I really missed that. And when he passed away, a lot of that changed for me because he was the connection for that. And so as I've gotten older, my core group of friends, I'm super tight with. There's a lot of loyalty. The loyalty to my mom, my family, that's super paramount to me. And I think now it's time to really bring some of those stories out and start talking about my dad, because I think people will really enjoy that.
I think so too. I mean, you talk about it very passionately, so I think that that'll be a great introduction for you. I'm sorry that it's taken so long.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Nothing that I've ever wanted in my life, whether it was, people always say, well, you got promoted to sergeant. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't get promoted to sergeant the first time. I didn't get promoted to commander the first time. Nothing that I ever wanted to happen happened when I wanted it to. It happened when it was right. And when you go back and you look, if I'd have got promoted earlier in those different positions, I probably wouldn't have been ready and more suitable for what I was ready to take on. And so I think waiting till I was in a good position right now to really talk about my dad, like I think it's going to be more meaningful, because I was really learning how to be a comedian, and how to craft this art. And like anything, like I look back at the first time we got a first cut of that documentary about a month ago, and I watched it, and there's a segment in there where they play my first night on stage, and listening to myself on stage, I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he even on stage? Take him off, get rid of him. And listening to how terrible I see that comedy back then to what it is today, it's night and day. But again, things happen for a reason, and I think it's the time is right, and I'll be able to honor him even more by being able to be at the skill level that I'm at today to craft and give that imagery of who he was and how he is so significant in my life to this day, through the stories that I will share on stage. So I think you're right. I'm really excited to see how this plays out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for you. It's really funny that you talked about the accent that we have down here because when you and I
Yeah.
talked on the phone a couple weeks ago, you asked me if I was from New Mexico. You're like, I can hear the accent. And I was like, I don't have an accent. I'm New Mexicans
No,
don't have accents.
yeah, you do. Yes, you do.
That's
Yeah, you
funny.
do. I mean, it may not be pronounced with you, but like there is a little bit in there.
That's
Yep.
funny. Oh, my wife hates it when I'm like, "Hey, you want to get down at the store?" No. She's like, "It's get out." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's get down. Let's go get down." Oh,
Oh
that's great.
man.
So let's get a little more serious. Do you feel comfortable talking about your worst call?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, again, if it's something that you start talking about and you just don't feel comfortable about, we can take it out. But you had talked about, and I don't know if it was the same incident, but you said the incident in 2008 with the 17-year-old, was that your worst one?
Yeah, I mean, I've had time to reflect on that. I mean, I was off duty and transitioned on duty when that happened. And that call was not the worst call I think I've ever been on. It was just the part that pushed me over the edge. It was that final thing that pushed me to realizing that I was struggling with my mental health. Like that, I can't say that I ever had one acute, this incident, did me in. It was that whole bottling up everything and not talking about it, and then that happened. And I talk about it now when I do speak to people. Like I say, everybody's got a chalice. They all have a chalice when you first start out in EMS, police, fire, medical, doesn't matter. You have this chalice, and it's an empty chalice when you first start, and you start throwing all these calls and all these experiences in. And if you're not conscious about it and emptying that chalice out in a positive way, and it doesn't need to be like you don't have to reach the point that I did. You could simply, exercise more or talk with a friend, or, just you're balancing your life out so that you're not bottling all this up and you're emptying on a regular basis, you'll be fine. I just never emptied it. I waited till it got to the very top and it overflowed. And that was that call. That was that experience in 2008. One of the worst calls, and I guess I've been thinking about this more lately, is, and I can't give you all the dynamics of it, but um, one of the worst calls wasn't such a graphic call. It was just one of the calls that really made me think. Um, it wasn't that long ago. I was a commander, and we had a kid that hanged himself from a very young kid in his early teens, hanged himself from a banister inside the house. And he got upset with his parents, and whatever correction they had given him, he decided he couldn't deal with it, and he decided to take his own life. And I get to the call, and I see one of our young deputies who is standing with him, because there's got to be somebody remaining with him until the detectives get there. And we had to clear the house, make sure nobody else was there. And he left a note saying that, because the parents did this very minor thing they took away from him, that this was what he decided to do. And listening to those parents and having to say that they're now going to be like visualizing what they're going to be going through the rest of their life because of how this kid perceived whatever minor thing they decided to do as correction as parents, that now these parents are going to have to live with that for the rest of their life. And I walked outside, and I noticed a bunch of the firefighters were hanging out at the back of their rig, and they were lingering a little bit too long. And I go, "Are you guys going to head out?" They're like, "Well, the captain's having, he's in the front." And I went up to the front of the rig, and where the firefighters put their SCBAs on and stuff, there's like a little cabin there. And he was in there, and he was crying, and he was breaking down really hard. And I got in there, I climbed in there with him, and I put my arm around him, and I said, "Look, man, you're okay. It's all good. Let it out. I'm glad you're dealing with it." But those people that were with him, they were still standing, his colleagues, they were all standing back there, and I think they kind of left him alone because they're like, well, that's the captain, and he's got to, he's the boss, and like we'll just kind of hang out over here. And I remember walking back there going, hey, guys, it's okay to go up there and be with him. We all deal with things differently. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing. He's processing it different, but like I had to kind of educate them a little bit. And this call is tied to another call where a young person hanged themselves, and the mom had to cut the kid down. And I remember in that instance with that call, I think it's young kids is what gets us, right? Because this kid was like 16, the other kid was like 15 that I just talked about, somewhere in that age. And I remember telling one of the deputies, hey, rotate with this other deputy, because you can only hang out with a dead kid for so long, but I think it just really messes with you. And the thing I remember from that call was just the screams from the mom and the daughter who were inside the house. It was a detached garage, and I could just hear them screaming. And so after I'd viewed the scene, I went in. I was a sergeant at the time, and I went in and I saw mom and daughter, and I walk up to them and I say, hi, I'm Vinnie Montez. I'm a sergeant. I'm a supervisor for the sheriff's office. So here's what's going to happen. And first and foremost, I am so sorry for your loss. My condolences to you. But there's nothing that's bothered me more in my career than saying those things to people. And what I mean by that, it's not that it's not the right thing to do, but no matter what I say or how I say it is ever going to stop that feeling or that screaming or that just, you know what I'm talking about. You've had to be in those scenarios where people are just completely distraught. It's so hard for you to hear that. And I could hear it right now in my head. It's so hard for you to hear that, for me to hear that, because I can't fix it. I can't do anything to make it better. I can't bring that person back to life. And those are some of the calls that I've gone on where you're just, people's lives change in just an instance, in just an instant. And you're just like, you don't have the words. You don't have anything you can say to fix that. And, I remember a young kid also, the paramedics were working on dad. His stomach was distended, and they're talking with the doc online. They'd already done 3 rounds of epi, et cetera, et cetera. And they were going to call it. And this young man who was standing with his mom is like, he's going to go at the paramedics now because they're going to stop. And I got in between him and I was like, hey man, it's all good. I said, listen, they've done it. These guys have done everything they can, but he's not really angry at them. He's just angry about the situation, Those are the things I think that bother me the most, especially with young people, getting so traumatized or being the victims in those cases. Those are the things that, when I think about, and when I perform the story dark humor on stage, I always lead in by seeing the things, law enforcement, medics, EMS, whatever we are in this community, people outside don't understand, because the things that we see, taste, smell, touch, hear, and feel are unlike anything else in this world. And then I lead into the dark humor bit because it's how we cope. And whenever I think about those things, that's the stuff that circulates through my mind that is so real and so vivid that nobody else who's ever had to be in those roles will ever truly understand what it's like unless they've been in those roles. And that's why I take my hat off to the young men and women that are coming in to this job today. You have to recognize it, especially in law enforcement. People are not always very happy with us, and they have reason for that. But to come into the job today, I really recognize it takes a strong person and it takes a courageous person. And so those are probably the toughest calls for me personally, is just that feeling helpless and not being able to give back to somebody to fix things, to put that last piece in the puzzle to make everything okay. There's just no such thing, there's just no such thing. That grief process has to happen. They're going to have to get it out. It's just no quick fix ever. It's never going to be that way.
So I haven't heard your dark humor bit, but we always talk about gallows humor in, first responders. And so how much are you divulging to your crowds? How much are you sharing of that?
Of what I just said?
Well, the dark humor part, right?
Dark humor, the story of dark humor, it is actually absolutely a true story. There's a couple taglines on the end that I've added that weren't said in that instance, but the first part, the lead up and the first quote unquote punchline, I talk about a guy. I was a field training officer. I had a recruit with me. We went up to a mountain area where there's a large reservoir. Guy pulled off the side of the road, parked, got out of the car, sat in the passenger seat, put a double barrel shotgun to his chin, pulled the trigger. So there's nothing from here up left. And, the guy's dead. So anytime we have a death like that, you always treat it like potentially as a homicide or whatever that needs to be treated. And we call out the on-call detective. Patrol gets there, handles the initial, but detectives come out to take it from there. And one of the guys that I was a law enforcement explorer with from like 16 up, he happened to be the on-call detective. So he gets there and, in true fashion, he starts rooting around the guy's pockets to figure out if we have any identification. He finds the driver's license. He takes it out. He looks at the license. He looks across the car at me because he's on the passenger side. I'm on the driver's side. And we have this exchange of looks. And he is like, keeps looking at me. And then he takes his thumb and he puts it over the photograph on the license, holds it up and says, "Do you think this is our guy right here?" Now, to us, that is like, that's very humorous to us because
Yeah.
this is not done in the public eye. This is behind the scenes, and this is how we deal with this craziness that we encounter. And so I took it a step further, and you can watch it online, where I'm like, I let that sit, and when I first say that first punchline, there's always two different groups of people in the audience. So the first one is like, "Oh no," and then there's the other people who are like, "Yeah," and those are like a lot of the shows I do are first responders. But if I ever do that bit, which I did last night, for a public crowd, there's always the people that are like, "Oh yeah," there's a lot less of those,
Yeah.
but a lot of them are like, "Oh," But I tell them before we go down that road, "Listen, I'm gonna be real for a second here," and I let that sit because that's where you learn. I told you earlier, like where I am today in comedy versus where I were. I would have been in a hurry not to let that sit, so I let that sit for probably 20-25 seconds with just the audience. I just stand there holding my thumb up like this, and I take my license out and I put my thumb over the picture. And after it sits there for about 25-30 seconds, I go into my next part where I'm like, "Bro, I don't know that I agree. I don't know that I agree." And Jason's looking at me. He's like, "What do you mean, bro?" I'm like, "Bro, it says clearly he has green eyes. To me, it's clear he has blue eyes. One blue that way and one blue the other way."
Yeah.
and and so that always like that, even the people who are like, "No, no," they can't help but laugh at that part. And then I extend it out even further where I bring the young recruit in and I say, he's looking at both of us and he's like, "Man, you guys are really messed up." And he's like, "Man, I'm just trying to figure out what this guy was thinking before he did it." And I'm like, "I don't know what he was thinking. I can tell you the last thing that went through his mind, but I have no idea what he was thinking." And so it's that culmination of taking all this stuff, which is real, finding a way to craft it and to deliver the imagery in the story where people can follow along and take something from it. And I can't tell you, probably Sam, one of the things that happens to me, which is so amazing, it's so humbling to me, is I will get DMs or I will see people at a live show and they will come up to me and they will shake my hand. They'll bring me in for a hug and they're like, "Bro, watching you online is nothing like watching you in person." They always say the live shows are better. And they say to me, and this is the part which I just can't even believe this is where we're at, but they will say, "Bro, when I'm having a bad day, I'll pop in one of your shows, I'll pop on one of your sketches online, and it always makes me feel better because you truly understand what we go through. You know where we're at." And to hear somebody say that they're having a bad day and that they can pop on some of my comedy and it makes them feel better, man, I don't even know. And some of the instances where people have been really seriously injured and they're out for a while or they're having a medical problem and somebody will send them a clip of me and they'll be like, "Dude, check this guy out. He'll make your day." And it's like, wow, like how did this even happen? So, and that kind of stuff behind the scenes makes me feel really good about me because I'm getting to do what I want to do, and that's share this gift with people. And the dark humor, I couldn't believe it. I posted it probably not even 2 months ago. I posted a short clip, reel on Instagram, and it's at 4.8 million views.
Holy
I've
cow,
never,
dude.
I've never had a clip go that viral that quick. So I must be hitting some type of nerve and resonating with people in some way with the dark humor. And it's the story I just told you. People just love that story.
Yeah, that one's like it's stupid funny, but it's also like, fuck, like that sucks, dude.
It's as
It
real as it
sucks.
gets.
Yeah,
It's as
dude.
real as it gets.
Yeah. And when you think about it, it's really, messed up, but it's also really funny. And I think with our crude humor, sometimes we can take it a little bit too far, you know?
True.
One of the I've been doing this almost 20 years, man. So you get kind of you get used to that, right? And one of the problems that we have here, and I'm sure you know, is we have a huge unhoused population here. And in the wintertime, it gets really bad. If they don't make it to a shelter, some people will pass away from how cold it gets. And we have a term for that. We call them bumsicles.
Mm,
And the first time I told that to my father-in-law, he about died. Like he choked. He didn't know if he should laugh or if he should do that like ah kind of you know what I mean? He just wasn't
yeah.
sure where to go with that. But we have to make it funny because we have to take that call and we don't get to go home and process it. We have to go on another call right away.
Yeah.
We clear that. You confirm the patient doesn't have a pulse and now you have to go help, Mima who can't poop, or grandpa who's fallen, or whatever you have to go to next.
Right.
We don't have that processing capability. So the fact that you're getting to do this and you're getting to do it in such a public way is really impressive because you're getting to kind of bridge that gap between the public and first responders. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And people also ask me, um, probably the most thing that they ask me besides what we've already talked about is, how does your department let you do what you're doing? And I said, well, I'm very careful about what it is I'm doing. So like, I don't ever give specifics or details or anything like that that is going to make our agency look bad in any way, shape, or form. I'm very cognizant of that. I pay strict attention to it. And probably on podcasts, I'm a little bit more like, I'll mention where I work, but like, you're never going to hear me say, BCSO when I'm performing or anything like that. I'm not going to do it. Nor am I ever going to use example that could be traced back to, I mean, I'm sure if they want to go pull records, fine, but um, I'm not going to give details that would, identify somebody clearly out about what I'm talking about. And people also know that my agency knows, they've trusted me. They've seen I've been doing this for a very long time now. And the thing that I try to remind people is, when I'm not on duty, I'm doing an art form. Comedy is an art form. So it has protections. To censor me or say I couldn't go out and do comedy based on my experiences, that would be like telling Dave Chappelle, well, you can't talk about your life experiences and the things you talk on stage. I still am afforded the same freedoms and the same protections by the Constitution that everybody else is. And believe me, I don't use that to throw in people's faces or anything, but that is a very factual thing. When I'm up there and taking people into this world of my world of comedy, it's an art form. And I love that. And I think that that is what people tend to forget, because they work for agencies that are very strict and very structured. And don't get me wrong, I've had other colleagues who are not even doing stand up, but they're doing sketch comedy, making little like skits online, and their department's getting all worried, and they're going to get called into court and all this stuff. And could that happen? Yes. But you got to remember, people still have the right to be creative and be who they are outside of work. And I've had to be very respectful of that. And when I finally do hang it up completely from the agency, I think that comedy you're going to see then is going to actually be a different level, because I won't have those things to worry about. That is always in the back of my mind, so that I don't create problems where there is. One of the things I really do stay away from is politics, because I think that is a great way to be split a crowd in half right
Mm-hmm.
now, but also just create some problems for me in the arena where I work right now. So I just have never broached that, and really, you don't need it. You don't need to go to politics in order to make people laugh.
No, and only half the people are going to think it's funny anyway. So
Right, right.
yeah,
And
they need you.
I don't see a reason to be more divisive. There's no reason. I'd rather have the crowd unified and we're all having a good time, and there's plenty of things to talk about besides getting into politics.
So how long does it take you to come up with an act or a bit?
So somebody once said to me, and this isn't my thing, somebody once said for every 60 minutes of material you write, only one of it becomes usable. So I have probably thousands of emails at this point that I've written to myself, and an idea will come up. Like, for example, the bit that I'm working on and the story that I've been really pushing out, it's on my new special. I wish I would have had the tagline that I came up with the other night for it when I filmed the special. And the bit's called Lucifer. And it's about me going snowboarding for the first time, which was a complete disaster. And going to ski school with this little girl, and her name, like, I call her Lucifer because she's so mean to me the whole time. And it's my trials and tribulations of going skiing and snowboarding that day. And that story came from an event that is probably, gosh, 15 years ago. But I got to find things like when you're writing, for me, the things that I pull from, it has to have a universal appeal. It has to, like, people have to be able to take that imagery of what I want to say, and I have to be able to convey it in just the right way. So I started on Lucifer. It used to be called the Ski Patrol bit, but over time you figure out better ways to label them, and you figure out better ways to get into the bit. Because when you originally tell the story, when I first started telling it on stage, it just didn't flow right. And that's the way all bits are. Like, whenever you're working out material, I've only had like a couple times where I went out, um, probably Code Yellow, which is when I talk about going into a Target, and I have this guy talk about there being Mexicans in electronics. That bit that I did the first time on stage, I got the sequence 100% right. That hasn't happened but like one or two times in my entire time. 420 Tickle Me Elmo took me four plus years to finally get right. Lucifer has taken me probably 4 years to get to 5 years to get to the point where it is today. And then you're like, okay, this is the usable bit. We can work this into the material, into the routine. But I would say, a good comic can come up with a new hour every year. Am I at that level yet? Maybe, maybe not, depending, because finding that time to get out there while I'm working a full-time job to run all that new stuff all the time, like I did when I was first coming up, but just trying to fill 2 minutes. The first time I was ever on stage, 2 minutes. But people are like, well, 2 minutes is not that long. Well, I'll put you on stage and you hold an audience's attention for 2 minutes where they're completely with you, and every like 10, 15 seconds they're laughing. It's a big deal. So I think it takes a long time to craft it. Plus, everything that I think is funny in my mind does not turn out to be funny because I can't convey the imagery. So again, it's just like learning how to be a cop. Trial and error, trial and error. It looks how to be a paramedic or an EMT. Remember the first time you ever started a line, right?
Oh yeah.
Did you get it right? And I've watched our new EMTs come through with the paramedic to do blood draws at the jail, and next thing you know, my guy's arm looks like a pincushion, because they've gone through,
Yeah.
3 different blood kits, and you're like, oh my gosh, how many times is it going to take? So comedy is no different. It's like trying to find that vein the right way every single time. So whenever you're doing a comedy bit, I need to get in that vein just right. And you could just and the way you make comedy actually just super, super good is like you could be in that vein and nothing is coming out. But you move the needle a little bit here or a little bit there, and all of a sudden you're in, you get the flash and the blood's flowing. Same thing in comedy. I'm refining. I could just refine one word in the way I convey that imagery, and that bit explodes, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, I totally get it. I totally get it." That's what you're working with all the time. That's the way to put it in a term that you might be able to relate to a little more. That's the way I'm always trying to find that vein, that perfect vein that I can just get into right away, and everything just flows smoothly.
That's fantastic. And if you're asking me, I'm perfect. I'm always going to get it. So I'm just kidding. It's funny that you talked about the 2 minutes, though, like trying to get it ready for 2 minutes. And people don't realize, let me tell you what, people do not realize how long 2 minutes is until you're having to do CPR for 2 minutes.
Yep.
So you can start telling people, get down and do chest compressions for 2 minutes, and let's see really how long 2 minutes is.
Yeah, you brought a flashback to me. So when I was a reserve deputy before I went to the jail, we got called to a trailer park one night where the call came out as somebody with a gun, a truck ramming a shed, and we get this call. And there ends up being a guy in the shed laying out, and he is not breathing, no pulse. And I am brand spanking new, and my FTO, Steve, he's like, get in there. No pocket mask, no keychain pocket mask.
Ugh.
I start doing ventilation. Of course, he's the senior guy. He's doing compressions, of course.
Of course.
And he's like, get in there. This guy vomits in my mouth like three
Blech.
times. And to this
Three
day, like
times, bro.
yeah, bro, I'm serious. I ain't even kidding. I ain't even kidding. And
Dude. Oh, that's
dude,
gross. No.
and they get there and
Oh.
they're trying to get everything situated, and I they end up transporting him. He's on the side of the pram. He's still trying to do, the side compressions. They load him up in the bus. They get him going. I'm there with the car, and there's like nobody else there. There's maybe another deputy who's going to take the scene or whatever. And my job is to get in our car and drive it to the hospital behind the FTO. And I'll never forget this. This lady comes out of the next door trailer, and she's got like a Gatorade bottle that's just filled with water. And she's got like one tooth, and she's wearing a moo. And she's like, "Officer, you want to rinse your mouth out with some of this water?" And I was like, "Man." So I drove to the hospital. I get to LUH, and I'm like, "Do you have a toothbrush and toothpaste?" Like, I was like, when you scrub your tongue and you like overdo it and you almost like gag yourself, I'm like
Bro,
gagging
I'm a
myself to death.
lesbian. I gag every morning. Come on, man.
Oh my God. We're taking this podcast to a different level all of a sudden.
You started it.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. My
Oh.
mouth was bleeding by the time I was done. And now people are like, "Why are you always such a germaphobe?" Why? I'm like, "You have no idea where this trauma comes from." So yeah, that was like literally my first month or two on the road. And to this day, people that are still around that know it, they remind me of that every now and then. The guy lived for a while. They parted him out.
Oh God.
Oh,
Oh, they parted him out. Oh my God. How did you not throw up, dude?
I don't know, but I have like, it's weird. We're talking about this last night. I talked about it on stage. Um, Lately, I've been having more of a gag reflex than I've ever had before, and we were talking. I don't know how we got on the subject last night, but in the middle of my show, I've never talked about this before on stage that I can recall. But when I was working in the jail, every time we get a female inmate come in, the female deputies would come out and they'd pat search the lady, right? But her purse or whatever she came in with, the male deputies would start to inventory that, and that was my job. I was inventorying her stuff, and like I was going through it, and she was like an unhoused lady, and I go through her purse or a bag, whatever. And there's like this little cloth thing that's in there, and I go to open it up, and the odor hits me, and literally I ran to the trash can, which was right underneath the gun boxes, and I'm like, and lo and behold, it is a used tampon, and
Oh
I've never,
no.
I have never, oh my God, dude, I have never had such a bad. And my buddy Sam, I told you I got two good friends named Sam. My buddy Sam, he still recounts that day. He's like, he's like, you remember that one time you all, and thank God I didn't have anything in my stomach, but that's the odors. Like I could handle, like I could see anything, I could touch anything, but smells to this day, like that is the thing. Like you get used to decomp after a while, but like man, other certain smells. Oh my gosh, man, no, no, no.
Ah, we see things that nobody should have to see.
Yeah, I mean, like nobody.
No.
Gosh.
Like, who does that? Who carries a used temp?
Well, this person obviously wasn't well. You know what I mean? And I'm this idiot rookie cop who has no, you know, I hadn't been. I mean, I wasn't married or anything at that time. You know, I. It's not like I go out and know what these things look like or are, right? So, oh
I
yeah,
mean, even if you were married, like, you shouldn't know what a used tampon looks like. Nobody should know what a used tampon looks like, man.
oh my God, maybe a fresh one, but not one that's had time to ripen.
No, no, that's so gross, dude. Oh man.
oh,
Oh, that needs to make it a, you need to make that a bit, man, for sure.
you think so? Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so crude. You think so? You know what? The reaction I got
Yes.
last night was so good. It's so good.
Yeah, you're still gonna have two people on the fence, right? You're gonna have the people that are really grossed out and the people that are grossed out but still think it's funny.
All right, I'll do it. I'm gonna write it.
All right, and you'll have to say this one's for Sam every single time.
I'll be like, it's so funny because Sam was there. Oh man.
That's
Oh,
fantastic, dude. Oh man. Well, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that you feel that we haven't talked about, or if you want to share anything. Actually, I do have one more question for you.
sure.
What's the most embarrassing thing that you've done or have had happen to you?
The most embarrassing thing that I've done or had happen to me, man. Boy, there's probably a lot. Most embarrassing thing. Um, like while on duty,
In anytime. On duty,
anytime.
on stage, like whatever.
Man, I feel like I need to phone a friend right now. Like I think I'm going to,
Do it, dude.
because I can't even. I can't. Like my mind is just like. So this is Sam. This is the guy that was there.
The tampon guy. Okay.
The tampon guy. He was there. He witnessed the whole thing.
Let me talk to him.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey Sam,
What are you doing?
I'm on a podcast right now, so mind your mouth.
You're on a podcast?
Yeah.
Hey,
So-
You're
Sam.
calling me?
Yeah. So you can't hear her, but her name is Sam. She is the creator of the podcast. And I was just regaling her with the story about me dry heaving over the trash can at the jail, the gun box, after I opened up that used tampon. And she,
When you were gagging?
yeah, when I was gagging, she asked me, what's the most embarrassing story she asked me, what's your most embarrassing story? And I can't think of one off the top of my head right now. So I figured I'd call you because I'm sure there's plenty that could come to your mind right now.
An embarrassing moment for you?
Yeah.
The tampon's a pretty good one, dog, because you should have known. You should have known. I remember you pulled that out and you're like, what's this? And I looked over and you started to lift it up to your nose to sniff it. And I
No.
was like, no. But it was too late.
I didn't remember that detail, bro. I didn't
Bro.
remember. Maybe it's just.
Because, I mean, that's a significant event, you know? You don't see that every day. I don't know how you remembered it and you don't remember anything.
I think
Am
that's.
I on your podcast right now?
Yeah, this is on the podcast.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. I mean, I don't know. I guess when you were chasing after that dude on Broadway and your gun bounced out of your holster,
Oh. Oh no, dude.
that's kind of embarrassing. Right before you got promoted, too. What else? Oh, there was that time in JCPenney when you shit all over yourself.
Oh my god.
Right now.
All right. We got plenty to talk about now. Thanks, bro. Thanks.
You got a couple of stories. Are you good now?
Yeah, I'm good. You remind me a lot of
Okay.
stuff. All right, bro. See you later.
I'm gonna interview him next.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Yeah,
Fred.
he did remind me of the most embarrassing story. And before I was a cop, one of my good friends worked at JCPenney's.
Oh, that was a real story. Oh God. Okay.
So he worked at JCPenney's and he was security loss prevention. And I drop by from time to time, be like, "What's up, bro?" And it was at the Westminster Mall, which is like every other indoor mall in the country. And he's working, so there's nothing going on. I was like, I'm gonna go get an Orange Julius inside the mall and come back. So I go to the Orange Julius, and they asked me if I wanted an egg in my Orange Julius, and I was like, yeah, I'll take an egg. Why not?
What?
And so I drink. I don't know if it was like the kids messing with me or whatever, but I was like, okay, let's do this. So I slam this Orange Julius, and I'm just kind of walking around the mall, and then I just feel like something not right in my stomach. And I'm like, oh man. So I have this thing about bathrooms. Like I can't use a gas station bathroom. I can't like go to porcelain that I'm not comfortable with. So the only thing I can feel comfortable with based on the scenario was going back to JCPenney's where my buddy worked. So I'm like, if the bathroom is good enough for him, it's good enough for me. So I am hauling ass back to JCPenney. I get there. I'm like, where's the bathrooms? They're like, upstairs. I go up the escalator. I go by customer service. There's the bathrooms. I go in. There's a dad who is holding his son up. He's a small son, and the kid is washing his hands, but dad's holding him up so the little kid can wash his hands in the sink. I go into the stall. I drop trowel, but I'm standing and I'm holding on to the sidebars in the trowel, just trying to clench it off because I don't want to like do this while they're standing outside of the toilet.
Because it's
And
a wholesome family moment.
yeah, it's just like I just felt embarrassed. I was so embarrassed, like it was going to be an explosion. And finally, like they're taking forever. I can't, that moment of truth has come. I can't take it anymore. I can't clench anymore. I go to sit down, but before I could sit down, it explodes,
Oh
and
my God.
it goes outside the stalls of the bathroom. So now I'm sitting on the toilet. I am not even making this up. I'm sitting on the toilet in complete utter embarrassment. My pants are soiled. Everything around me is soiled. And I see, as I look around the sides, I see this little kid's hand coming down towards what had gone outside the stall, and he's about to touch it, and the dad grabs his kid and he swoops him up and he's like, "Don't touch that, son." And they leave out the bathroom. So I'm sitting there like trying to collect my world, going, what in the hell? So I kind of clean up the exterior of my clothes as best as I can. I don't even think I bothered to wipe because I was like, what's the point? And I stood up and I tied my pants on, belt, locked it in with a belt, and I walk out of there, and I'm walking quickly. Like there's stuff all over my shoes. I'm leaving a trail. I'm going down the escalator, and I go out of JCPenney, and like, there's those vestibules. There's those long hallways that lead into the mall from the outside, and then there's
Yeah.
the vestibule doors. Like this could not have been painted any worse of a scenario. As I'm approaching that vestibule, there are like 5 or 6 of the hottest girls I have ever seen walking in to the mall. And as I go past, one of them is like, "Ew, what is that smell?" And I am just like, I keep going. I don't look back. I get out to my car. I had some paper bags in there. I drive a 1990 Honda Accord. I'm putting paper bags all over the seats. I drove home in my own shit. Man, I have bared it all here on this show today. Thank you,
Dude,
Sam. Not you, Sam Hard. Thank you, Sam Hard.
I like your friend. You need to keep him close, bro.
We started in the jail together in 1998. Yeah, he's been one of my closest friends. God, I knew if I'd have called him, he would. Yeah, he didn't fail us. Yeah.
He
Wow.
did not. I'm so I'm so glad I asked that question.
Oh my God, I can't believe I told you the truth.
Okay. Your gun fell out of your holster?
I don't need to talk about that one. Well, I mean, just a short and simple. Like I had the hood got down on my holster. I wasn't carrying like a level 2 or a level 3 retention. So if the hood was down and I was chasing after this guy and I hit like a bump in the road, so it caused me to bounce. And when it did, my gun bounced out of my holster and kind of slid down the street. And I just kind of picked it up, put it back in, and like the foot
Everything's
pursuit was
cool.
over. Oh my God.
Did anybody
God.
see it, or was it just a quick
Yeah,
one
there
and
was a
done?
bunch of kids that were partying up on a balcony, and they're like, "Hey, officer, you might want to get your gun."
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God! Thank God it didn't go off. I mean, there's no reason it would, but
Yeah.
God,
Oh, the times we get lucky. Whew.
yeah.
That was fantastic. I thank you
Wow.
so much for sharing that, man. That was a special moment.
Yeah, that's special. All right.
Oh, brother.
I'm glad you feel good about it.
Oh, I feel freaking great, man. I'm gonna sleep like a baby, picturing that all night. I mean, that's something you just can't make it up.
No,
Like you
it's not.
can't. The little kid reaching down to touch the brown shit that just came out of the
Oh
bathroom, dude.
God. You know what I always think about? You know what I always think about in that scenario? I always think about the dude that came in or that lady that came in to clean that up. Oh, they're like,
No.
not even, not even.
Oh man, that poor person.
That poor person. God help them. They probably still tell that story.
Oh, they probably do. Could you imagine though? Like they were probably like, The amount of shit I just cleaned out of that bathroom.
I know, but imagine if they're from Berkeley. Like, I came into the bathroom, y parece que there was shit everywhere. I didn't even know where to start. I was like, maybe do I get a mop? Pero no, I was like, I had to get in there with a squeegee. Y parece que we squeegeed it out.
It
We called
was
the
on
fire.
the
We
ceiling.
we we called the fire department to do what they call a fire flush porque we couldn't get it out. And then you're imagining the firefighters in there with a 1/4 inch hose.
They're all looking at the ceiling.
You know, I never looked up. You're probably right. There's probably some spackle. There's some
If
spackling
there
up there.
was that much force that it went under the floor, dude.
God. You know, I've talked about this on stage one time, and I don't think I've ever done it more than once. And I labeled this bit "Out the Sides" because literally out the sides of the stall. My buddy Leonard, I told him this story. He's a cop in Kansas. Oh my God, to hear him tell the story, bro. Oh God. And he does all the sound effects, and he's one of those guys that he's also a gagger. Like when he starts thinking about stuff that's not really pleasant, he's like, oh, stop, stop. So when he tells a story, like he's got to take his own moment to deal with his own traumas. He's talking about
it. He's got to calm himself down.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
dude.
all the guys that I hang with, I think they're all funnier than I am. They just have such a great way of telling stories. Like, I wish my buddy Leonard, I gave him a chance to be on stage with me one time, and he actually did very well. He just never stayed with it, and I think he would be like he'd rival Dave Chappelle.
Oh, that's a big statement. I love Dave Chappelle. I'm glad that you've said his name now twice.
Yeah, I mean he's amazing.
I love his stuff. If you can make that connection, you let me know.
Well, one night he came into Comedy Works, and Wendy Curtis, the CEO and owner of Comedy Works, said, "Hey," she didn't say who was going to be there, but we kind of all had an idea. She emailed us all. She's like, "Hey, be down at the club tonight." And then he was eating down the street, and this was like a night where he wasn't even on the list. He was just going to come close out the show. And so Wendy says, "We're going to start putting you guys up doing 5-minute sets until he finally gets here." So there's a bunch of the new talent people there, and literally, I was slated to go on stage after the person who was on stage, and I would have been able to say I opened for Dave Chappelle, and there comes Dave Chappelle walking through the back door and goes up on stage. And the coolest thing I ever saw that night, because by then like Dave was a lot more muscular like he is now, and not like that thin, skinny Dave Chappelle from back in the day. He
Yeah.
was more muscular and thick and just great dude. And you can't smoke in the Denver Comedy Works, but Dave's up on stage and he's like, "Hey, bro, any of you guys got cigarettes?" And this dude's like, "Yeah, I got cigarettes." So he throws it up and Dave lights it up on stage and he's smoking. He's like, "Bro, you can smoke too. It's all good. They're not going to say anything." So this guy, Dave and this guy are smoking cigarettes. And at the end of the show, he invites the entire show to go with him to Tamayo, which is like this restaurant bar in Denver. And everybody's like the Pied Piper. They all go down there. And Dave Oder's like a Modelo. And we're all just standing there like in awe of Dave Chappelle. But gosh, had he been just 5 minutes later, I could say I shared the stage with him, but you know, that's fine. What an opportunity just to be in the presence to watch him work on stage. So that was pretty cool.
That is really cool. So did you go eat with him?
No, I mean, he invited everybody out for a drink at this place, and a lot of people went there, and then people just start falling off. But yeah, I just went for a little while, and I mean, I didn't get to talk to him or anything like that, but I was up just watching him how he interacted with people, and he was just real low key, real nice guy, and yeah, it was an experience. It's so weird because you get to see so many of the greats come through the doors there, and you know, I'm still Comedy Works is my home club, and I'm very loyal to that brand. They've given me so much opportunity to grow and become who I am today. So, you know, Wendy, if you ever hear this, thank you so much for everything you ever did for me.
Ah, you can tag her. You can share it when it's up. Hint, hint.
All right, we'll do.
Thanks, man. All right. So when are you coming down to Berkey?
I think there's a chance I might be there next year for sure. There's talk of this law enforcement conference that's going to be down there, and I know that the lady who runs it, she emailed me back probably a couple weeks ago, and she's like, "Hey, we got our conference filled for this year, but next year we'll keep you in mind." So I'm sure that that's going to happen. I just never know. Like, things are popping up everywhere. There's shows that are not even on my schedule, on my calendar, or on my website yet. But like, just coming up here, I got a show in Wyoming, I think like in a week, and I'm going to be in Columbus, Ohio after that. I'm going to be in Kansas City. I've already done this year. I've already done like Phoenix and what the heck, St. Louis, Missouri, and I mean, I can't Las Vegas. I can't keep track of every place I'm going anymore. Like, I have to look at my own website sometimes to figure out where I'm going. So it's true. It's true. So it's just, there's a lot going on. So if I didn't, I want to say thanks to Mike and Jonathan and Madison. They're all my management, or not my management team, but my agents for comedy, and they handle all my stuff. They do absolutely great work, and they're super people to work with. So they're part of CWE, and man, they keep my life all organized and scheduled whenever I go places.
No, that's super cool, dude. Well, when you come down here, I need 4 tickets. So,
All right, I got you. You don't worry. I got you
yeah,
backstage.
dude. Yeah, hit me up, dude, for real though.
I
I'd really
will.
love
I
to hang
will.
out and see when your show's live, if they're and see if they're as good as everybody says they are.
Then I'll be like, look, tonight we got a special one for Sam. We're talking about two things. We're going to talk about out the sides and what not to sniff when you're on duty.
Dude, that should have been one of the first lessons they taught you, man. If it's not yours, don't smell it, bro.
I don't know that that's true. Like, I don't have a recollection of what he said. And he's like, I told you he's a good storyteller. He's like, bro, you remember when you were lifting it up? And I was like, bro, I don't remember that. Or if I did, I blocked it out. The
You
trauma
must
was
have
so
like promptly blacked it out.
I blocked it out immediately. Apparently, my body was like, "We can't handle this. No,
Nope,
no, no."
shut down. Immediate shutdown.
Immediate shutdown. Yeah, a fail safe.
That's right. All right, dude. For real though, this time I want to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that you feel like we didn't talk about, or if you want to share anything or kind of plug yourself.
Yeah. So I guess the thing I would like to start off with is not about me. It's more about encouraging people. Like, if you're struggling with your mental health at all, please don't be ashamed of it. There are people out there to your left and to your right. You just need to reach out to people and share what's going on in your heart. We lose, like I said, 3 times amount of officers every year to their own hand that we do in the line of duty. I could name a half a dozen officers. Mike Campbell, Rob Robitaille, Tim Dasher, Paul Kiefer, men that I used to ride with as a young police explorer that took their lives after they left the department. And there's more than that. One of my own recruits, the dark humor story that I told you a while ago, that was a real story. The recruit that I had that night later took his life as well. A lot of people struggle with these demons inside, and they just struggle not only with their mental health, but the things that they use to cope with their mental health. And those things can be like substances, or what gets a lot of our people is alcohol. I've been so lucky that alcohol never got a grip on me. And I'm not saying I never drank too much, because there were times where I did drink too much. But the truth of it is I want people not to be ashamed of their mental health or the struggles that they're having, and that taboo that sometimes is associated with it, especially inside of law enforcement and the EMS community. Be brave. Know that I'm still standing right here, and I have struggled, and I still do struggle with the things that I struggle with. But I am proud to say that you don't have any reason to feel that embarrassment, and people will help you, and they'll be there for you if you just need to reach out and seek that help. And the other thing I will promise you is you will be the better for it. They always have that old adage of what, brings you down will only make you stronger. And it is such a true thing. Like, we all have to go through those trials and tribulations. And I just want you to be the best you. So please don't be ashamed of anything you're struggling with. And the other thing I just want to tell you is, and I am nobody to give advice. I'm just sharing my humble opinion, and my story is, find balance in your life. Enjoy the people that you have around you, and that includes your family and the things that Dr. Kevin Gilmartin always say, don't be one of those guys or gals who used to say, I used to spend time with my family, or I used to go fishing. Whatever makes you happy, whether it be fishing, motorcycle, race crossing, whatever. I don't even know if I've said that right, but whatever it is, keep doing what makes you happy. For me, it's stand-up comedy. I found that vein, and it has been wonderful for me. And then the only other thing is, please come out to a show. I'd love to have you. Please hit me up on all social media. Everything is just my name, Vinnie Montez, Vinnie Montez, Montez. You go to vinniemontez.com and link to all my social media platforms. Check out the things that I do, not only in stand-up comedy, but also the sketches that I collaborate with all kinds of people from around the country. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be here, Sam, with you on your podcast. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my gift, my experiences, my life story, because it's very humbling to me that I get to do this every day in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a podcast, a live comedy show, a KOA radio show, whatever it is that I'm able to do. I appreciate it because I can't become the person that I am and get to where I'm at in my career in comedy or in my career in law enforcement without people supporting me, and I'll also being just there to help me out and get through this journey. So thank you very much for having this platform that is obviously reaching people, and you're doing a great job to keep people moving and motivated with your message as well.
Hey, brother, I appreciate it. And the honor truly is mine. It has been such a joy and a pleasure, and you have made me laugh harder than anybody else tonight. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming out to the Noon Podcast, man. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
Yeah, brother. We'll talk later. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the Noon merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.